Hello and welcome to Tyrant Dead from Outbreak. I'm sorry about, this, the eBay and all that. I couldn't get an exactly full screen, but anyway. Yeah. I like zombie games, I like zombie survival games, I'm told. It's like you have to choose the right choices to live, and yeah. Anyway, let's try it.
It started as a normal day, just like any other. I took a shower and grabbed a quick cup of coffee before heading out of the front door and waving goodbye to my loving wife. I jumped on board the bus, sat down, turned on my MP3 player, and promptly entered my usual daydream state. I finally arrived at my office building, headed up the 10th floor, and sat down at my desk to see a huge pile of paperwork. I sighed and got started.
Next.
A scream coming from down the hall broke my concentration. I considered going to see what it was, but the thought quickly passed. Probably just another hysterical secretary overreacting to a spider. Just as I started getting back to work, something else grabbed my attention. I peered out the window into the street below, and to my astonishment, saw a scene of utter chaos. People fighting, even killing each other for seemingly no reason. By this time, some of my coworkers had gotten up from their desks and joined me in staring out the window.
This sounds like the guy from Diablo's voice. Well, these are going to get me killed. I don't want to go down the hall. And continuing my work, yeah.
I tried to get back to my work, but a few minutes later, I overheard one of my coworkers talking about a virus that makes people homicidal. However, I could only make out bits and pieces of the conversation, and didn't learn anything especially useful.
Okay, cool.
At this point, I felt myself entering a state of mild shock. It was obvious that whatever was going on was serious, and that a significant percentage of the population were going to be killed or wounded over the course of the next few days. My thoughts quickly turned to my wife. Was she okay? What if these maniacs were near our home?
I'm trying to call my life direct call, just go ahead and see if she's okay.
I hung around the office for a while, but it wasn't long before I began to hear shouts and screams echoing around the building. It seemed that the infection had already made its way inside, and that staying here was no longer safe. I eventually decided to go home and check on my wife. Had I left sooner, things would have been much less dangerous.
Damn.
I began to make my way through a series of corridors that lead to the elevator. On my way, I noticed a struggle out of the corner of my eye. I turned to see a disfigured man frantically clawing at and biting a young woman's leg. Blood was already pouring from her multiple wounds. The woman cried out for me to help her.
Attacking's gonna get me bit. By the time I find somebody to help, they're gonna already be infected and I'm gonna die. Call 911 isn't gonna do anything because the lines are dead.
I continued down the hallway, ignoring the woman's cries for help. She would have been infected and it wasn't worth the risk.
Good man.
I arrived at the elevator, but to my dismay it seemed many other people had the same idea. I heard a ping and the elevator doors slid open. In a split second, the large crowd of office staff pushed and shoved their way into the tiny metal box.
You probably kill yourself. The elevator might get broken down. The elevator will be too late. Take steps.
I quickly made my way down the stairs to the ground floor. Sure, I was a little out of breath, but at least I saved time and avoided a potentially lethal situation.
Good.
I eventually reached the ground floor and entered the lobby. The scene in front of me was one of extreme violence. The security team was desperately battling with a swarm of infected, and they appeared to be losing. I watched helplessly as a guard on the opposite side of the room was torn limb from limb. I noticed his gun lying on the floor just a few meters away from his dismembered corpse.
grab the ground, make a dash with the main exit, leave the lobby, and try to escape through the They really need a gun because that will cause attention anyway. And making a dash to the main exit might get one of the guards to attack me because they think I might be infected. And the infected might get me anyway, so...
I managed to slip away without any infected noticing, and proceeded quickly towards the rear exit. I made my way through several corridors towards the back of the building. As I approached the rear entrance, I spotted a hefty padlock across the bolt, making it practically impossible to open without a key. I cursed my bad luck and tried to figure out my next move. The janitor would have had the key, but reaching his office would have required going back towards the lobby.
Search for windows, climbed. The security are probably dead. Charging down the door. I don't think that will work if it's padlocked. Search for. I'm dead.
I realized that breaking the door down would be impossible, and that heading back would be too dangerous. So I set about searching for another exit. I remembered that there was a small window in the male bathroom just a few doors down the corridor. I arrived at the bathroom door and pushed it open. Suddenly, I heard a bestial roar coming from further down the corridor.
Oh God.
A dozen infected had spotted me and were now heading in my direction. I quickly entered the stall and spotted the window I was thinking of. However, to my dismay, it was much smaller than I had remembered.
Oh, no.
I thought that I would probably fit, but I knew it was going to be a very tricky maneuver.
Straight to the window, hide in the cubicle, get over the flood the bathroom before trying the window. Too long, and I don't think they'll get distracted by flooding. Hide in the cubicle, I'm pretty sure they'll be able to smell me. Go straight through the window.
Not wanting to waste time,
oh God.
I set about trying to squeeze through the window. A few awkward movements and a lot of pain later, I managed to force my way into the street, escaping the infected with only a few seconds to spare.
Thank God.
I dropped from the window and landed on the pavement with a heavy thud. Looking up and down the quiet back street, I tried to decide what to do next. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that my best bet was to head to a main road.
Whoops. In trying to steal a vehicle and catch a lift, I jogged down the quiet street for several meters before stopping to catch my breath. I looked up briefly and saw a little girl wandering aimlessly in the middle of the road. Call that to her, ignore her.
I realized that the girl was most likely infected, and therefore I decided to ignore her and continue down the street. I eventually arrived at the main road. As I suspected, the scene wasn't pretty. In every direction I could see people either trying to fight or flee from the numerous infected. An array of dismembered corpses already littered the streets. I suddenly felt nauseous, and within a few moments I was vomiting my breakfast all over the pavement. I wiped my mouth with my sleeve and looked up to see a bus driving down the street. The number was the same as the one I usually took home. There appeared to be a lot of people on board already, but I thought I might be able to squeeze in.
We're in the middle of the road and force the bus to stop. Ignore the bus to continue down the street, or try to flag down the bus. I think the problem with the bus that allowed people is one of them's undoubtedly infected. So, no, I'm not going to do any of those. Ignore the bus.
I realized that getting on the crowded bus probably wasn't a good idea. If someone on board were infected, then there would have been no escape.
Can I press enter? That one. Space. Click.
As I continued down the street, I noticed several groups of people. Just across the road was a group of men with rifles. They appeared to be having fun shooting the zombies rather than trying to escape. In the alley, I could just about see a group of teenage boys armed with a variety of makeshift melee weapons. A few meters from where I was standing, a paramedic and an armed police officer were helping a wounded man, and as I glanced over my shoulder, I saw a group of survivors from my office building, heading in the same direction.
Oh.
I decided that it was probably best to team up with other survivors.
So I have to choose one? Men with rifles are going to get overrun because the what's it called? Noise during the paramedic, police officer, and wounded man. Guys probably infected. co-workers, I don't know. We're just in a building with all of them. I think I'm going to join the teenage guys because they have weapons. And they don't make noise. That looks good.
I made my way to the teenage boys and began following them down the street.
Lost a group of teenagers if we just defeat any freak they encounter. Not likely to care much about you. In a sticky situation, their preference will probably be to leave you behind. Damn.
I told the group that I thought we should try to find some transportation to get out of the city center. One of them suggested we go to the parking area a few blocks down. We quickly agreed to our strategy and made our way down the street. As we approached the car parking area, we noticed a few infected wandering idly around the entrance. There was no real way to avoid them.
Let's try to run past them, suggest fighting them as a group, distract them away from the entrance so the others can get through safely. Run passing them, they'll probably get seen. Fighting them will get us killed. Distract them away, they'll leave me behind. Convince all the others to distract them. They'll probably get somebody else killed. Why not?
After some heated discussion, somebody from the group eventually stepped up. He began making such a noise as he could, running in circles around the infected. My plan worked and they began to follow him away from the entrance. The rest of us swiftly made our way inside and began to search for a suitable vehicle. We were so wrapped in what we were doing that we forgot about our brave volunteer.
Oh, no.
We never saw him again. We eventually found a few different options for vehicles in which we could make our escape. On the far side of the parking area, we found a pair of road motorbikes. Closer to us was a four-wheel drive all-terrain Jeep, a large freight truck, and a convertible sports car.
Motorbikes, Daryl Dixon, Jeep, freight truck. Motorbikes can get through more because they're smaller. Faster. Motorbikes.
I suggested that we take the motorbikes. The others didn't seem to like the idea, stating that maneuvering bikes between the infected could be tricky, with 2 or 3 riders wedged on each one. The rest of the group decided that we would take the Jeep. We approached the Jeep and peered inside. To our dismay, we saw a pair of infected inside, desperately clawing at the windows in an attempt to escape.
So just putting the zombies out from the Jeeps, just trying to... I'll just open the door and beat the skeleton, to be honest, but obviously that's going to get one of us killed, so we'll find the vehicle.
I made my suggestion, but the others didn't listen. They really wanted that Jeep, and a few zombies weren't going to stand in their way.
Did they die?
The others immediately flung open the doors and started trying to drag the zombies out. However, without my help, they were having serious trouble, and it seemed like they would most likely end up dead if I didn't intervene.
Lead them to it and escape on one of the motorbikes. Motorbikes.
I headed towards the motorbike and didn't look back. I climbed aboard my chosen vehicle and sped away from the car park onto the main street. By then the roads were littered with bodies and car wreckages.
Hopefully it's like Walking Dead
It was all I could do to avoid them. Everywhere I looked, I could see only scenes of carnage. It seemed that those not already infected were fighting a losing battle. My thoughts quickly turned to my wife. I tried to tell myself that she would be okay, but that didn't stop the horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach. I knew I had to get home as soon as possible. In the distance, I could see a gas station with a few of the zombies on the forecourt. I quickly glanced down at the fuel gauge and saw that I only had about half a tank remaining.
The attached convenience store takes place. It's you on the road without stopping.
I decided not to stop for gas or supplies due to the potential danger. Half a gas tank was more than enough to get home anyway.
Well, that's true, but I think the point is... Well, if you have enough to get home and you know, then that's good, but... So you have some supplies at home, and then you can figure out what to do there.
I continued down the road before turning onto the main highway out of town. However, it wasn't long before I noticed a mass of vehicles blocking the road ahead. The combined sound of all the honking, shouting, and screaming
Maneuver with your motorbike, that's why I got you.
Nobody had kept to their lanes, and cars were packed so closely together that not even a bicycle could squeeze through. The blockage extended so far down the road that it was literally impossible to
Why would you
discern
beep
where
in
the
a
cause
zombie
was.
apocalypse? Why? Just take the vehicle for a go around the blockage.
I decided that there was no point in waiting for the traffic to clear, and that without the Jeep, driving off the road was just too dangerous. I headed back the way I came and turned off the highway at the first exit. I soon found a safer, albeit less direct route home.
Okay, cool.
As I sped down the disturbingly quiet back road, my mind began to wander.
Don't wander.
Without the distraction of imminent danger, I began to remember the horrific scenes I had witnessed just an hour ago. Images of mangled corpses flashed before my eyes, and my head began to spin.
Don't.
I swerved onto the wrong side of the road, just as another vehicle pulled out from a concealed entrance. I braked sharply, but it was too late to avoid a collision. Amazingly, I wasn't seriously injured,
It's
but
your
my
fault.
ride was badly damaged.
Try to steal the other driver's car, try to repair the vehicle, carry on foot. Why do I have the feeling he's gonna shoot you or something? So no. See the other driver's hurt, that is not an option. Sorry, to repair the vehicle isn't an option. Carry on
I
foot.
realized that without transport, I would have to walk the rest of the way home.
That's fine.
Not wanting to waste any more precious time, I continued my journey on foot.
Good. You're a smart person.
After a half an hour of walking, I began to recognize my surroundings, and knew that I would soon be home.
Oh, good.
There were several different routes I could take.
Continue along the main road for the train line, take a shortcut through the cornfields, take a shortcut through the woods. Cornfields, you won't be able to see them. In the woods, you could get lost. And you can't know how many there are. Train line and main road. Main road, you could get killed by people or zombies, and the train line seems more safe.
I decided to get off the main road, as it would undoubtedly be dangerous in such a heavily populated area. I decided to follow the train line instead, since it ran not far from my house and would be totally deserted. Sure enough, I didn't see another soul.
Good.
I finally arrived in my neighborhood,
Yes.
exhausted. I knew that my house was just a little further down the street, but the area was swarming with the infected. Most of them seemed distracted by what few survivors remained, but I knew it was only a matter of time before they noticed me. I remembered about a small alleyway nearby, one that would take me most of the way home in relative safety. I entered the alley, and as expected, it seemed totally devoid of life. However, as I walked past a large dumpster, an infected old man stepped out of the shadows and tried to grab me.
Okay, well this is one of those problems. You grab him by the neck and push him away. Grab his torso and push him away. Punch him in the face or throw him over your shoulder. Grab him by the neck and push him away seems the safest, other than the fact that he will rip your arm off with these hands. Grab his torso, he can just bite you. Punch him in the face, he can just bite you. And throw him over your shoulder, it will require strength and will require his face to go near you so he can bite you.
I grabbed him by the neck, realizing that he'd be unable to bite me. I pushed him away as hard as I could, and he stumbled backward.
Did you live?
I had bought myself valuable time,
Good.
but it wouldn't take long for the creature to regain its
That's why you
balance
crushed
and
its
come at
head.
me again.
Oh, it's
I
on the
turned
floor.
to run back the way I had came, only to
Nope.
see that another group of them had followed and were now blocking my retreat. My only hope was to try and get past the lone infected.
Yeah, grab a brick and throw it at its head. Grab a brick and hit him in the head with it until when he gets close enough, try to run past him. Why do I have the feeling he's just gonna grab you? Why do I have the feeling that it's not going to be enough? And why do I have the feeling that they're gonna catch up? So one of you two. One of you two. Throwing might not be powerful enough.
Grabbing a brick, I waited just long enough for the infected to get close before smashing it into his face. There was a sickening crack as his jawbone fractured and blood sprayed from his mouth. My former neighbor fell to the ground, and before he could get back up, I was able to run past.
Ah, yeah.
I sped down the alley and back onto the street. When I looked over my shoulder, there was no sign of my pursuers. I could see my house now, just 100 feet or so away. My heart sank when I saw yet another group of infected wandering aimlessly between me and my goal.
Try to sneak past them, try to run past them, you're dead. Try to go to the neighbor's rear guard. The neighbor you just killed, so it should be kind of fine. Try to sneaking past them is probably not a good option, so... You're going to go through your back door your neighbor's rear guns because you're a rebel. Yeah.
I decided that it was too dangerous to carry on down the street. I went around the back of one of the neighbors' houses and climbed over the fence into their garden. It was tiring, but I carried on scrambling over the fences until I got to my own backyard.
Good, so you're alive and you're at your house.
As I approached the house, I noticed the glass in the back door had been smashed and the door left slightly ajar. I was terrified.
Infected wouldn't leave your door slightly ajar. Go to the shed and find a weapon. Yep.
I realized that whoever had broken into the house could still be in there, and without a weapon, I wouldn't be able to help my wife.
I knew your kitchen, if it was anywhere near there, you'd go in and grab a knife, but no.
I headed over to the shed and checked my pockets. Luckily, I still had my keys and was able to remove the padlock and open the door. Inside, there was a wide range of tools to choose from.
Chainsaw too loud, take the sledgehammer too slow, take the crowbar, you can be going 3 minutes, take the hand axe. Hand axe is probably the best option, but I really like being gone 3 minutes.
I took the crowbar, knowing that it would be easy to swing indoors, yet still heavy enough to cave in a human skull. With my weapon in hand, I left the shed and walked back to my house. Before I could enter, I discovered why the back door had been left ajar. A teenage looter emerged from the house carrying my television, obviously intent on profiting from the crisis. When he saw me, he dropped the TV and pulled out a large kitchen knife. At that moment, I couldn't tell which one of us was more afraid.
I don't know, but if he was trying to grab a TV in the middle of a zombie apocalypse, he's probably gonna die. I would attack him, but I feel in a good mood and I feel like he doesn't want to hurt me, so I'm gonna let you go.
I told the looter that I wasn't going to hurt him and that he could take the TV and go. He didn't bother to pick it back up. Instead, he ran over to the nearby fence and climbed over into the neighbor's garden.
Okay.
Having dealt with the looter, I walked in through the back door. I was relieved to finally be safely indoors, but I couldn't rest yet. Not until I was certain my wife was okay.
That teenage person stabbed her. Barricade the back door or lock the back door. Zombies can get through locks and they can get through barricades, but barricading is probably the better option in this place.
I quickly shut the back door and locked it, then looked around for some furniture to wedge in front of it. It took me a few minutes to properly secure the entrance, but at least I knew nobody would be able to force their way in.
Good. I'm gonna go next.
I began searching the ground floor for my wife. As I came into the living room, I saw that John from next door was standing there. He had his back to me, and was clearly oblivious to my presence. His shirt was covered in red stains.
Attack him with your weapon, see if he's okay. Back away slowly and hope he doesn't notice you. Oh, God. Attack him with your weapon.
John was surely infected, so I snuck up behind him and hit him as hard as I could on the back of the head. His skull made a satisfying crack and he fell to the floor, dead. I had never liked him much anyway.
Good on ya.
As I went to go upstairs, I noticed a note had been left for me by the front door. I recognized my wife's handwriting immediately. The note said that she couldn't wait for me any longer, and that she was going to pack her bags and take the car to her parents' house in the
The
countryside.
car's still there.
As I read the note, my heart sank. I prayed that she would be able to make it to her parents in one piece, but knowing how hard it had been for me to get here, I couldn't help but wonder if she was still alive. When I realized I may never see her again, I began to feel tears rolling down my cheek.
Continue searching the house. She must have
I
been
pulled
there.
myself together and resolved to keep searching. I needed to make sure the house was secure before planning my next move.
Good. Smart man.
As I climbed the stairs, I heard an odd shuffling noise coming from my bedroom. I didn't know if it was my wife, a looter, or another of the infected.
First thing, weapon ready, knock on the door and ask if...
I slowly pushed the door open and stepped inside.
You get attacked and die.
The scene that greeted me will haunt my nightmares for years to come. My beautiful wife was pinned on the floor, desperately trying to fight off one of the infected. She could barely keep the creature at bay, and if I didn't act immediately, she would surely die.
Hit the infected on the head.
Wasting no time at all, I smashed the infected over the head with my weapon. I was lucky not to hit my wife by mistake, but at least she was alive.
Good. That was awesome.
I was finally reunited with my wife. I dropped the weapon and held her as tightly as I could.
Oh no, she...
In that moment,
infected.
I was happier than I had ever been, yet the feeling would not last long. I asked her if she was okay, and she showed me her hand. Blood dripped from several bite marks on her fingers. I didn't know if she would become infected or not, or even how much longer she had. She sobbed as I struggled to decide what to do.
Oh yeah, the hand axe, you could... Yeah, the hand axe, you could cut off her arm, just in case. Cut off her fingers, leave her, kill her. Don't know if her fingers are good enough. You should see how long it's been and then cut off her entire hand.
I knew I had to do something and do it quickly. If I could stop the spread of the infection, I might just be able to save her life. We ran down to the kitchen, took a clean meat cleaver from the knife rack, and tied an improvised tourniquet around her wrist. Within seconds it was over, and I was carefully dressing the wounds with bandages from our first aid kit. I didn't know if she would survive or not, but at least now we had hope.
Yes.
My wife and I spent some time discussing what to do next. We realized that we couldn't stay in the house forever, as it was just too dangerous this close to civilization. We decided that our best bet was to load up the car with food and supplies, and then head for her parents' house out in the country. I made sure the house was secure, dragged the corpses down to the basement, and then helped my wife get everything ready. She looked pale and weak, but it didn't seem like she would turn, at least not for a while yet. By the time everything was ready, it was already nightfall, so we decided to spend one more night at home before hitting the road. I don't think either of us slept that night, but it was better than traveling in the dark. We left at dawn.
To be continued. Ah, okay, sweet. Tactics. Survived the day, yes, survived your wife, saved your wife. Tactics, rank A, you have a solid understanding of zombie outbreaks and your survival skills are far above average. You'd probably survive a real outbreak, yeah. Compassion, rank D. Most you have some shred of morality, your primary concern is with keeping yourself alive. Compassion doesn't matter in a zombie apocalypse? Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed Dead Frontier Outbreak. Well, I might play number 2 because that was really fun and I was badass at it. If you want to play it, you can play it on Congregate. It's if you don't know what Congregate is for some reason, it's a free game website where you can play games on it. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Like, favorite, and stay awesome.